Let's talk about a freshman that we wanna watch. One that you're very curious about is we're gonna head up to the state very much north of where we both are. We're looking at Michigan and Bryce Underwood, quarterback for Michigan. I'm very intrigued to see how he steps in that role with Shamar Moore as the head coach. All of the, we'll call say tomfoolery for lack of better words, surrounding the Michigan football program right now, as well as a lot of those national championship players now having moved on to the NFL or into future endeavors. It's truly a different roster now. So I'm curious to see how he's going to step in that role as Michigan's lead signal caller because they still got expectations.
Yeah, he joined Michigan, by the way, last year as they were prepping for their bowl game as a 17-year-old, uh, outshining pretty much everybody on their team. He's 6'4", dude's 208 pounds. He looks like a real man as far as like an 18-year-old kid. Doesn't look like, no offense to Ryan Williams, but doesn't look like a Ryan Williams lining up
Hmm.
at quarterback for Michigan. And I think that's an interesting aspect where you look at Michigan, you look at what they've needed for the last few years. You need a solid quarterback who can be dynamic in that team. Every time Michigan has had a dynamic quarterback, you can even say JJ was one of those guys. It seems like Michigan does well. And with what Bryce does, I mean, you don't get all the accolades he got in high school. You don't get to be the number one quarterback recruit in college football or in going into college unless you're actually a talented player. And I think he's proven that he is that talented. You also don't keep that number one ranking when you reclassify. That's another thing as well. But he did that. He was fantastic. Everything looks to be going the right way for Bryce. I am very intrigued to see how he matches up against the Big Ten, who is one of the best conferences. I think is at the top in all of college football. But it's like one of those things where you look at him. Can he step up to the competition? I think he has every opportunity to. But I need to see some things. But I do think he's a true passer. He's a great runner. We'll see for sure if that's real and that's not just high school hype here shortly. But I am just generally I'm excited to see what Bryce is going to do. We see freshman players every year, especially at quarterback, surprise us. It's been a while since we've had a freshman quarterback in a Heisman conversation. Wouldn't be surprised if we see somebody who has very similar builds to a lot of our previous freshman Heisman conversation candidates for at quarterback. Bryce has those fits that mold, so it wouldn't surprise me to see something like that from Bryce, especially Michigan. If they're going to make the playoffs, they need a big season from Bryce.
Absolutely. And I want to just throw few things out there too. Obviously, you mentioned the number one recruit, 17 years old, number one quarterback in Michigan, three-time state champion, 165 touchdowns accounted for over his 48 career starts in high school, which is absolutely
Crazy.
insane. The high school kind of projection slash reminds us of is for Vince Young, which I thought was a very interesting one. Which college Vince Young, if those who don't remember, my goodness, was he something special? You mentioned 17 years old and already 6'4", 220 pounds. Absolutely freakish athlete at the quarterback position. The ability to throw the ball, run. I think he's going to bring a lot in. He's the first freshman quarterback to win the Michigan starting job since 2009. Like that's the expectations are really, really high. I'm curious to see how he's going to step in that role. And the Big Ten's as tough as it's ever been with all the teams that are in there. So I want to see how he navigates that and to anticipate probably some, I won't say rough moments or just some freshman moments,
Yeah.
some new to college moments throughout, especially the first half of the year. I'm curious if the defense and the offensive line, the run game can kind of carry. I don't say carry him because that makes it sound like he's terrible, but help shoulder the load a little bit for him as he gets it going. Maybe the back half of the year we see him really turn it on a little bit and maybe makes him in a playoff run. But he's going to be 20 years old in his third year, so that means you're going to potentially have a guy that's with him is if you keep him there all 3 to 4 years, you have a he could potentially lead you to as a college football legit see a championship contender with. So I'm excited to see how he steps into that role, which that's the downside that comes with it being that awesome coming out of the gate and getting the chance to start early is the
Yeah.
expectations are there regardless. Like it's a lot of people aren't going to be like, "Oh, he's a freshman." You get New Mexico out of the gate, a game you should very much win as the 14th ranked team in the country. But then you get 18 Oklahoma now with John Mateer. You know you can always bet on him to bring it, unintended.
Yeah.
So I think that's a scary team. You do have Central Michigan, Nebraska, Wisconsin, USC, some more winnable games, if you will. I know USC is always a tricky one. Washington, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland before Ohio State. So they do have a lot of very winnable games if you're Michigan. Actually, as the more I look at it, they're good in name, but there's a lot of cupcakeness in there. Like there's a lot of teams they should be able to roll through if he plays 80% as good as expected. So I think it's almost the perfect year for them to do that because after the Oklahoma game, they got a lot of very winnable games for a team that's ranked number 14 right now. They have 2 ranked opponents on their schedule. If I'm looking at this correctly as of now. They got Ohio State the end of the year and Oklahoma September 6th. So, like, there is, I won't say no reason, but there is a lot of opportunity for him to get his feet wet and really get the college game going, at least going into that Ohio State game, which that's gonna be different. That one we're really gonna see for sure. But I'm very intrigued with this. This is a very intriguing one when you mentioned the schedule, how the team is around him, and just how freakishly gifted, naturally talented he is. He was you could make the case he could have been on Michigan's start. He could have been Michigan starting quarterback last year as a 16-year-old, and they would have been better.
Yeah, yeah, he's an impressive player. And I think you mentioned their schedule. I think it's worth noting if he has a big game against Oklahoma, the rest of that schedule, barring some major collapse from him, the rest of that schedule is a Heisman Trophy candidacy building schedule. USC is a big name. They may not be a great team this year, but they are a big name, and it looks good when you can run it up on a USC. That looks great. And going into Ohio State, there's something to be said about the swagger that Michigan carries in that, and how Bryce has experienced a winning Michigan team after beating Ohio State going into their bowl game. He was part of that practice squad. So he knows what that attitude comes after beating an Ohio State team in an emotional game. He can be prepared. He can be prepared for it. Now, obviously, there was a lot of shenanigans after last year's game, but at the same time, there's going to be some emotions in this year's game. And if he can come in and he's riding a high all season long, he has his name in a Heisman Trophy candidacy conversation. I think there's a lot of opportunity for that to be his moment. That Heisman moment they all talk about. No better team for a Michigan player to have it against than Ohio State at the end of the day. And on the flip side of that, that would ruin a lot of playoff bracket predictions that people have if Ohio State goes down in that game for the 6th year in a row, which is every Ohio State fan hears that and they just cringed. And I apologize to you, but I'm not sorry. You guys won a national championship last year, so you'll be okay.
Let's be fair. This would just be the 5th year in a row. Right now, they're on 4. It'd only be 5. They haven't hit 6 yet. Although if Bryce does it, it might get 6 and 7, not 6, not 7, not 8. Like, it might get real bad if they can't get this one.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think Bryce is a very interesting player to look at going forward. Just like you said, he's 17 going on 18 now. What he does now as a freshman starter, it's no longer a freshman when you've already practiced through a bowl cycle. Like, you are a freshman by name, but you are not a freshman. And I think that's the big thing here, and especially at Michigan, freshman, that title lasts 2 games, and then you're no longer a freshman. If you're not going to be redshirt, you're no longer a freshman after 2 games. You're Wolverine, and you got to go prove it. And so, unfortunately for him, I mean, game 1 seems not so bad, but game 2 is going to be the real test for him. But if he can get through that, yeah, just kind of smooth sailing until game 12.
We've heard of super seniors. He might be a super freshman at that point, but I think all eyes are definitely going to be on him up north. And I honestly can't wait to see it. That Oklahoma Michigan game is going to be one to watch. I think if he is able to hit the ground running like a lot of teams expect, how he won the quarterback job, we might see ourselves a quarterback battle between him and John Mateer. And just Oklahoma doesn't play defense, so if they can find a way to score on Michigan, we're going to have ourselves a fun little shootout between 2 quarterbacks. But